You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And today my special guest is an old friend, Shazia Rafi. She is the former Secretary General of Parliamentarians for Global Action, PGA, and she's the Managing Director now of Global Parliamentary Services, LLC. She's also the UN representative for the All Pakistan Women's Association, which is the largest and oldest women's organization in the country. She has a master's degree in international political economy from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, and she graduated magna cum laude from Bryn Mawr in political science with a junior year in international relations from the London School of Economics. She's bilingual in English, Urdu, and proficient in French, Hindi, and Punjabi. Under her leadership, PGA has successfully promoted the Rome Statute, establishing the International Criminal Court, played a critical role in the passage of the Arms Trade Treaty to regulate conventional weapons trade, built international consensus for progressive legislation on gender equality and reproductive health at the Cairo Conference and the Beijing Conference as well, and clean air, clean water legislation focused on urban environmental health and mediated in conflict zones from Azerbaijan to Côte d'Ivoire and Haiti. It's quite a portfolio. And she will be with us in just a moment, directly after this brief message. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Shazia Rafi. Hello, my dear friend. It's very good to have you here, and welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you for having me, Robin, and good to talk to you too.
Well, it's been far too long.
It has.
Yeah, and I know that you have served your time, I should say, with Parliamentarians for Global Action. And so you're actually finally free of what was a very onerous job, I know, as the head of that. And so what are you doing now?
What I did after PGA is that I set up a nonprofit focused on air pollution. My younger daughter, as you know, had severe asthma.
Exactly.
And every time I would go to the region with her, we would end up spending most of the time in medical situations.
Oh.
And I actually had to also medevac her once. So it was
Wow.
something that I promised myself I would do. And I got the chance to do so after I left. The first part of it was a year's worth of negotiations with the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 to get air pollution, air quality on the actual SDGs, including the targets and indicators.
Yeah.
And I can send you the link to an article I did on how we did that. And then in 2016, at the end of the year, we set up a nonprofit based in New York. It's called Sustainable World. Its first operative program is Air Quality Asia. And we were working with 4 Asian countries at a pilot level, but also at a regional level on economic cost of air pollution, its linkages to climate change, getting national clean air plans and acts and renewable energy acts in all those parliaments.
Wow.
Of course, all of that has come to a grinding halt with the US government shutting down
Yeah, I
its
know.
support of both development aid, but also, more importantly, its support for environment and climate change
Yeah.
work.
Oh,
So,
God.
so we are all unemployed as a result as of
Well,
February 1st.
listen, Trump has been such a disaster for the entire world. I can't even begin to, you can imagine what everything that we've tried to do and are still trying to do, but it's so far not.
Well, I think it's not just him,
No, of course it's not. Of course it's
yeah,
not.
because I think we have to also do some introspection. I'm a registered Democrat, but really the party did not anticipate what it could have anticipated much earlier. We were all sort of living this very rosy life
Yeah.
in terms of what we thought was an electoral process. And we forgot that this country is a federation and that the voices of small states and small communities matter as well.
Oh, the Electoral College.
So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of blame to go around. The
Yeah.
issue now is,
Yeah.
it's not just the Electoral College, it's something that we knew, and we just, I saw it really, I mean, it's interesting when you talk about the book, one of the things I'm trying to do is remember some of the things from the early years. And right after I was appointed Secretary General, the first parliament I called on was the US.
Mm.
And there were new members coming into that parliament from we had always a lopsided sort of 3/4 Democrats, quarter Republicans. But the new Republicans coming in were coming in with a very different mindset.
Yeah.
They were much more religious, much more conservative. They had
Yeah.
spent some time at local school boards trying to add creationism to the biology curriculum, trying to change the way people looked at church and state. They had then gone on to city council, then state assembly, and by the time they got to Congress, they'd already cut their teeth a little bit.
Yeah.
And going there trying to argue for reproductive health programs of UNFPA was quite a task. But it's sort of, I remember coming back and saying to people, something strange is happening here, but no one was paying any attention.
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah. Well, they were finally forced to pay attention.
Yep.
And twice they were forced. Twice, if they didn't get it by then, God knows. And it has been just disaster. I mean, it has gone from bad to
I have
worse.
an interesting question for you. I mean, the party this time around published its Project 2025, 900 pages of this is what we intend to do.
Yeah.
How many people in the leadership of other parties do you think actually read through that?
I don't know, but I think probably very, very few.
Yeah.
Very few. I mean, I did, the women's movement did, I mean, because, and the hair on our heads uncurled instantly. But I don't think it made much of a dent. There was this whole, well, be fair, let him try crap that people came out with.
This happens in every country. I always find this very interesting that when somebody who says, I am the wolf and I'm going to eat you, runs for election, they just, he's just saying that to win the election.
That's right.
Oh, they're not going to do it.
That's right. And so nobody believed it. And then he came in and he did it and he did it and he
Well, they're already through 70% of it.
That's right. And they were shocked, my dear, clutching their pearls.
Yeah.
They were just shocked. But they immediately covered and said, well, he's just delivering on his promises. Yeah. So it has been the most, egregious and terrifying thing I can think of. And it's also worse. I keep saying this, on this program, but it's also at extremis because scientists tell us that we basically have 5 years to turn this around for climate change, and then we've passed a certain do not go here, and there's no reclaiming it. There's no.
No, there totally isn't. And I think certain parts of the country, I live on one of them, is already past that. New York City has certain areas, the flood zone. I mean, it's just half a block from me where the marker is. And in Sandy, the water was a block away from my apartment.
Right.
So it's and there are parts of Brooklyn and Queens and downtown that get flooded whenever the rains come. So I mean, the waters are rising everywhere. It's just a matter of how soon and what you can possibly do to get to higher ground, how you will compensate people. I mean, the city council in New York 2 years ago, when the rains had flooded the subways and parts of Queens, had started discussing how to pay people to leave their homes and move somewhere else because it was impossible to continue to come in and save the situation.
Yeah.
So it is something that is pretty much, I mean, insurers are no longer insuring houses, beachfront houses in California. So it's very much upon us.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the thing that is something that is important is that this now affects so much more in Asia and affects so much more in South Asia in particular.
Oh, it just wipes it out. I mean,
It wipes it out completely. I mean,
it's
we're going to be in South Asia, we're in a part of the world where, 50 degrees centigrade heat is going to be the norm in the summers.
That's right.
And people can't live in that level of heat. So
No.
and that then becomes a driver for immigration and for emigration, which is going to make things much, much worse. So it's not a very positive situation around the world as a result.
Oh, no. And I have been calling on the program people who could give us some hope or give us some guidance or give us some, and there are mostly, of course, scientists, but nobody listens to them anymore. And they are helpful. They have been the only good news givers of late. But the good news is very small, and the bad news is very, very large and looming. And so it's I tell myself that we might as well continue doing what we're doing because that's the best thing we can do, and we don't want to not do it. And so it's at least it's an honorable way to go.
I think the thing that is there as it's not, I mean, when things get that bad, something has to give. So what I do see is that in the next generation of people, which are the people in their 30s, they are not as materialistic as the generation before, including in their politics. So I noticed that on the liberal side, it has shifted also much more to the left. And just as the right moved to religion and an extreme right, the center is what has failed. And you see that in, for example, the New York City mayor race. You see that in a range of other things, where the younger people are no longer wanting to be, wearing a corporate tag on their politics.
Right.
And that is possibly the only thing that looks like a ray of hope. The thing that's difficult is that these corporations, meanwhile, have become so powerful.
And so sophisticated,
And so sophisticated. And this entire artificial intelligence move is going to make that even more.
I know.
That for this generation of young idealists, it's going to be very hard to, cut a path, particularly in countries like this one, which is a two-party system.
Yeah.
I mean, South Asia is not a two-party system, so it is possible for them to bring in more nuanced politics, but it's still very, very hard because the tie-up between the right-wing politics and corporate politics is very close.
Yeah, it's almost indissoluble. Yeah.
Here, India, everywhere. In Pakistan, the corporate politics is both civil and security sector, but it means the same thing ultimately.
Interesting. Yeah, of course it does.
It's this, yeah, because it's this whole, that we have the right to exploit the resources and to build these big data centers and to do all of this.
Sure.
And control your preferences, your purchases, what you are paying. Trump to me is the one factor that even they can't control, because he's not somebody who always reacts in a predictable way.
Oh, this is true. God knows. God knows.
So, sometimes we joke, my younger daughter and I, we've been saying, I don't know about the Nobel Prize, but if there was a prize for resolving the US healthcare problem and bringing public health to everybody, if there was, she says MacArthur Genius should look for something like that. If that was dangled in front of him, he would do it.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
But
and if you name it after him, also, if
No, you don't have to name it after him, because he wants the prize that is actually established.
Oh, I see. Of course, yes.
He doesn't want something. Name it after him. He can do himself. He's already destroying half the White House to build a gold dome
That's
and
true.
name it after himself. But the notion that there is something established where the established club is going to let me in is something that
He yearns for.
He yearns for, and I think that makes it much harder for anyone to put him in that sort of a box.
Yeah.
So
it is. It leaves me speechless. It leaves me. I've tried everything I can think of so far, and I'm very proud of the things that people are doing. But when you say the next generation, I don't know that there will be one.
There is a next generation. They're already here. Whether they will produce a next one, I don't know. Many of them are saying we don't want children because the world's so messed up.
That's right.
So the ones in the 30s are already here. Then they are the ones who are starting their professional careers or have already 5 years in. And they are the ones who are choosing a different lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I think that is possibly, it's not an immediate solution other than local races, but it is going to have an impact because, we were the generation who bought that economic argument that consumer spending is what drives the economy, and that corporations can donate to both and then it's fair. But it actually isn't.
No, of course not.
And so it just, I think they are the ones who they don't buy as much, they don't spend as much in the same way.
But you see, I just don't think he's going to give up after 3.
No, the thing is, I was telling somebody.
And it's not just him either.
No, it's not just him. So I was telling somebody the other day that the Democratic side needed a Steve Bannon. They needed somebody who could play the 10 steps ahead poker and think through what it is that needed to be protected. For example, why are we so surprised that suddenly there is this immigration customs enforcement agency which is running around with masks on? Because there was a loophole in the law that allowed them to run around with masks on. Now you're trying to pass laws to ban them from being unidentified. But that was a hole that you should have had somebody identify and say, this is a loophole, this is a hole which can be used against average citizens. How do we close it now when we actually have the trifecta?
Well, it does exist. It does exist.
Right, it does exist. And there's a lot of power and authority that the federal government has, which which it hasn't abused in the past, but the fact that it has it means that somebody in the kind of think tank on the other end should have been thinking, okay, what if somebody were to abuse it? What is it that we would need? And I think that's
Right.
what's missing. So,
Right.
like, for example, when we look at the justice system, this is there all over the world now. I mean, India's faced it, activists there have faced it, people all across Asia have faced it, and other countries too. That you can take a case to the legal system, you can take it all the way to the Supreme Court. Even if the court gives a decision, federal court at the state level or the Supreme Court, whatever, gives a decision in your favor.
Mm-hmm.
To enforce it, you end up having to go back to the same executive authority
Yes.
that you have filed the case against.
And if they don't want to do it, you're
And
screwed.
if they don't want to do
You
it,
are totally screwed.
there is no, the justice system doesn't have its own enforcement
No.
tools.
No.
So now state level has to create them.
Yeah.
So this is where, you know, the states, it's almost like a reversing the argument on its head, where state rights have now become the protection of the liberal left.
I know.
Which is like so bizarre.
It turns my youth upside down and inside out, you know, because
Completely.
if something was states' rights, I immediately knew where I stood, which was on its neck.
Right.
And you know, but this is a whole different, you know, cup of tea.
But this is something I'm curious about. Like, who is thinking on how to develop that kind of a protective network between the states, in the sense that this is a federation where states came together to create the union.
That's right.
Now, on, let's say, environment and climate, where California, New York, Illinois, a bunch of states have climate change acts, have various laws that are pro-climate. Is there a way, and are there people who are actually going to work on linking these states in a way that is institutional?
Yes, there are. Some people have made it a real priority of them. For example, Jane has made it up. Fonda, who is together with Gloria and I, the co-founder of the Women's Media Center, Jane has given up basically everything to go and do and save the world.
But you're at a level of doing public advocacy on it. But people who would be creating institutional judicial mechanisms.
But that is very much what she's doing. She started with a PAC, and then and it's growing out of the PAC. It isn't perfect. It isn't everything. But it's a beginning. And also, and this is more encouraging in a sense. Obama has made it one of his priorities, if not his only priority. He wanted to work on gerrymandering, and that's his into it, into glomming these concerns together in a way that creates some kind of alternative. Not institution, maybe institution. I don't know what it would be, but something that would be replacing what we have not had and thought.
See, I think these are not enough. And what I would propose, if somebody, and since I have the mic here, what I would propose is creating an institutional mechanism, like a council of state level environment secretaries, who would actually meet to both bring all the laws and regulations of the states that join this council in conformity with what should be, what was the federal laws on these issues, whether it's the EPA regulations, etc., that were there, to mirror that, but do it in a way that is institutional. And that would, because you see, when you create,
how do you establish that?
Well, that is what I would like to work on, because the way you establish that is you do have to, of course, go to somebody for some funding to start it, but you have to establish it by going and getting the agreement of state governments to be willing to join that, because these are government officials, these are state secretaries of environment who would agree to be part of this council. And it would be states like New York, California, Illinois who would take the lead. But it is in huge urgent need. We are proposing something similar in South Asia also, because that is the issue there too, that when the federal center is, let's say, of course, the Indian government and Pakistan government take climate change more seriously than the US government does here. But you do need to have a structure institutionally that is going to connect the state environment ministers in that case. Here it's the state secretaries for environment. And that is what I would like to work on in my sort of sunset years here. Because if we lose what we created, in my work, I was using the US Clean Air Act, the US Clean Water Act as the sort of model legislation around the world. The EPA air quality monitors were the best in the world, which is why China allowed the first one to be set up in the consulate in Shanghai in 2010. So we cannot lose that lead. And the only way to keep that lead is to create this kind of institutional mechanism. Because when you set up something, whether it is Bloomberg, whether it is Obama, whether it is Jane, it is all still outside the actual system. It has to be within the system, and it can have its jump start from somebody coming from outside. Like one of the things that I'm thinking of, since the work is shut, is we can't do Air Quality Asia work anymore because there's no funding right now, and we didn't plan to get funding from China, so that is not possible for us as a US based. But one of the things our board has been saying, we need to set up an Air Quality Americas that links the North and the South American work. And this is one of the platforms that I would like to create with that.
Interesting. You always had such interesting ideas.
Well, that was my main thing. I was always the ideas person.
Yes, it's true.
Sometimes they flew, sometimes they didn't.
Well, they mostly were very good, I think. It's just I wouldn't throw in the towel quite yet, Shazia. No, they were very good. And it's a matter of how to organize it, how and who. Because
how and who, and also it doesn't take that much. Like if one could call a ad hoc working group meeting with some of the people that you've mentioned, and think through the how and who with 3 states, one on the west, one in the middle, one on the east, and come up with a platform. I got the idea actually at the Chicago Climate Summit, which I went and then wrote that article for Women's Media Center, where people were grappling with what to do at the state level.
Right.
And I thought, we're doing this in South Asia, why not here? But I think this is what I would love to do. So, separate from this call, when you have a chance, I would love to be introduced to at least 1 or 2 of the people you mentioned about how to call for something like this.
Sure.
And the issue would be, New York State's very well placed to do so, because we have both the executive power and the state level legislature and Senate all in one block of viewpoints on climate. And it would be a very good sort of platform to do with that. But so could California, so could Illinois.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, well, as usual, you come up with wonderful ideas, and it's a matter of then trying to put them into practice, and to practically which can stall the most intrepid of your followers, of which I am definitely one, but I don't know.
I think, why don't you bring it up with Jane?
I will. Oh, I will.
Because I think that is the type of, because, you have to have something you can hook these things on, which will then create, because if you do have a meeting of a working group that brings together 3 state secretaries, New York, Illinois, California, and we would like to do that as Sustainable World, because we have to do something outside of just Asia at this point. And we're set up as a 501c3 in New York. We're accredited to the UN, accredited to the UN Environment Program, to the Climate UN FCCC, as well as to the World Bank.
So
But I
the
think,
structure exists.
the structure exists. Whatever we're doing in Asia, that particular Council on Environment Ministers, we're starting in India. It's had its second sort of session of the working group in July. So you can see some of that on the website. But I think the structure exists. It's a matter of having somebody, the high profile like her, and having one donor saying, okay, we will fund a working group meeting and see if we can persuade these 3 state secretaries to join. That will give us an idea. Is there life in this? Is there not? Is there energy in this? Is there value in this or not?
It's creating it's creating a United States government on climate without it. I mean, with around the government.
It's creating an institutional support structure. Just like when you're about to change a building, you create a support structure so that it doesn't all fall down.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. It's kind of
very.
making that, yeah. So, we did that when, during that year when I was negotiating the SDGs on air pollution, we did that. We created a clean air working group, a parliamentary working group on clean air with people from different countries. They started putting resolutions at the UN from their own delegations. And we ended up with 3 of the targets and indicators, then eventually having the language that we wanted. But it's like you sort of have to start with a working group, and it can be an ad hoc one. It doesn't have to be a major institutional setup. But it allows one to have a closed door meeting that allows you to put ideas out and see where it has its.
Have you got this good idea down in a few paragraphs?
I have it for South Asia, but I can convert it into what you and I are discussing.
That would be very helpful, I think, because then I will send it to Jane and we will talk, and I will try to get her on board, or then think beyond that. That would be wonderful.
Sure, I'll do that. Give me a week, and I'll do it within the week.
Fantastic. Wow. Well, this has been a constructive little program.
Well, I was thinking this weekend, what is it that could be something that is interesting, replicable, because this is where the work on clean air started. It started in Los Angeles. So really in the 70s. So, or even before in the late 60s. So it's something where we have to bring back that, and it doesn't come back through just politics alone.
No, of course not. No, it's you should excuse the expression, it's vision.
Yeah.
And
I think that's the thing that, when I was reading this horrible document of 900 pages, I kept thinking, it's a horrible vision, but it is a vision, and it is somebody who's got strategy, right?
Yeah, I know. That's the terrible thing. They're very organized. They have strategy. They have plans. And they've been waiting a long time for this, and
they've been working at it for
yes, they have. They certainly have.
Yeah.
So, well, my dear, thank you so much, and thank you for continuing to think and battle and struggle and fight and be your usual wonderful self. And we will be in touch. Stay on the line when we hang up.
Okay, I'm going to stay on the line because I have to ask you about that poetry also.
All right. Okay, stay on the line. Okay. But in the meanwhile, thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you for having me.
We have to take another short break here, but I'll be back directly with some, memorializing words. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Entitlement. Now, there's a fighting word. The gutting of a 120-year-old historical structure, known commonly as the White House, a structure which was formally declared a museum by an act of Congress in 1988. That demolition has elicited outcries of shock from the American public. Now, on the one hand, we shouldn't be surprised because we would think that people would be more obsessed about the fact that their medical costs and their health care is being made impossible, and unthinkable, with even 60% of Republicans indicating that they're concerned about health care costs rising and losing health care coverage outright if Congress does nothing to prevent it. But we shouldn't be surprised. We shouldn't be surprised because one of Trump's earliest public acts was to promise the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York the beautiful limestone reliefs from the facade of the old Bonwit Teller building. They were just gorgeous. I remember them. Well, it was because he got impatient at the pace of the demolition, and so despite his promise, he had them jackhammered to dust. This is the time when all of his supporters rush forward and say, well, it's been done before. Look at all the changes to the White House. Without noticing or relaying that construction up to this time was always overseen by a bipartisan commission. And by contrast, the new project, his ballroom, has been bankrolled by big tech firms and crypto moguls, and it is an act of extreme excess and egotistic self-advertisement. It's as if a group of coyotes had got together and decided they would pee on some kind of sacred ground, and hey, that would show they were there. The difference between the Truman balcony, for example, and Trump's ballroom is the difference between permissiveness, permission, seeking it and getting it, and then operating on it. Permission and entitlement. He has acted always as if he's entitled. The East Wing, particularly historically the domain of the First Lady, will be completely razed in the project. So one tends to stop for a second and think about Rosalind Carter trying so hard to hide her steel magnolianess, and Betty Ford being honest about her alcoholism and her breast surgery. Nancy Reagan just staring at him adoringly, and Hillary Rodham Clinton trying to bust the doors right open from that place and be herself, and Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama trying to plant a garden for the health of America. Well, never mind the First Lady's quarters. And never mind that Trump says he will pay for it, along with the crypto millionaires. Because he doesn't keep his word, we know. He is, for example, also at the same time demanding that the Justice Department pay him $230 million to compensate him for the federal investigations into him. It's a situation that has no parallel whatsoever in American history, in which the officials reviewing his claims are his own allies. He said he might use those funds to pay for his ballroom. If I get money from our country, he says, I'll do something nice with it, like give it to charity or give it to the White House. while we restored the White House. Yeah. Sure. Meanwhile, he paved over the lawn in the rose garden to create a patio, like Florida. He's added gold filigree to the Oval Office and ornate chandeliers to the cabinet room. The White House was built by enslaved people and immigrants. Did you know that? Yeah. Construction began at noon on October 13th, 1792, with the laying of the cornerstone, which was done by enslaved people who quarried the stone. The main residence and the foundations of the house were built largely by they got to be employed, Europeans. So between the slaves and the immigrants, it was built. Scottish masons did the sandstone walls. And the building was originally variously referred to as the President's Mansion or the President's House. And yes, it saw many changes over the years, but mostly they were additions that were thoughtful and actually added to the importance of the place. Like, for example, Franklin Roosevelt's swimming pool when he had polio. Computers and the first laser printer were added during the Carter administration, but even more notable was a Carter-era innovation, a set of solar water heating panels that were mounted on the roof of the White House, and Reagan removed them. Out of respect for the historic character of the White House, no substantive architectural changes have been made to the executive residence since the Truman renovation. Since the Kennedy restoration, every presidential family has made some changes to the private quarters of the White House. But the Committee for the Preservation of the White House, where have they been? Must approve any modification to the staterooms. Charged with maintaining the historical integrity of the White House, the congressionally authorized committee, congressionally authorized, works with each first family, usually represented by the First Lady, the White House curator, and the chief usher. Well, two of the three were present, to implement the family's proposals for altering the house. And the ghost of Thomas Jefferson still walks the grounds and the house, because he fancied himself quite an architect, and he was a brilliant one. So 2 colonnades, one on the east and one on the west, were designed by him and were added later to connect the east and west wings to the residence. Barack Obama had a set of solar panels installed on the roof of the White House, making it the first time solar power was used for the president's living quarters. And here's Jefferson again. The White House and grounds cover just over 18 acres. Before the construction of the North Portico, most public events were entered from the South Lawn, the grading and planting of which was ordered by, yes, Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson also drafted a planting plan for the North Lawn. He was big on agriculture as well. We know this from Monticello. The general layout of the White House grounds today, which will be completely torn up literally by the roots, is based on the 1935 design by Frederick Law Olmsted, Jr. of the Olmsted Brothers firm, commissioned by Franklin Roosevelt. And during the Kennedy administration, the White House Rose Garden had been redesigned by Rachel Lambert Mellon, together with Jacqueline Kennedy, who would be spinning in that grave. She took great care that everything, including the frames on pictures that hung in the White House, were of the correct period. John and Abigail Adams lived in the house only briefly before Thomas Jefferson moved into the, quote, pleasant country residence in 1801. But despite his complaints that the house was too big, as he wrote, big enough for 2 emperors, 1 pope, and the Grand Lama in the bargain, close quote, Jefferson did consider how the White House might be expanded and improved. In August of 1814, during the War of 1812, the White House was burned by British forces during the burning of Washington, in retaliation for acts of destruction by American troops in the Canadas. And, much of Washington was affected by these fires. And Dolly Madison famously escaped basically with just her life, but also with a life-size portrait of George Washington that she took down from the walls, had covered with blankets in her carriage, and made off with. That was the one thing, she said, had to be saved. There were numerous weddings and some deaths in the White House. All gone now, because mostly they were in the East Wing. But the births, we could notice the births, because one was James Madison Randolph, the grandson of Thomas Jefferson, born in the White House. And then the others were all by enslaved people. Asnet Hughes, the son of Ursula Granger and Wormley Hughes, enslaved people owned by Jefferson. 2 children of Francis Hearn and David Hearn, enslaved people owned by Jefferson. And the Fawcett children, 4 children born to Fanny Fawcett and Edith Fawcett, enslaved women owned by Jefferson. Conservation is the etymological word that is the root of conservative. You would think that it might mean something to conserve. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on social media at The Robin Morgan. You can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and you can find my new novel, Parallax, and my just-out new book of poems, Harvesting Darkness, wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer, as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer for this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on Women's Media Center Live.